Hi everyone. Today we did get a little bit of a wick to this low consolidation, and then we did push through that level 597.63 and then finish above the EMAs and SMAs here. A little bit of bullish momentum going into the close. We didn't get out of this consolidation range. You still have the high here back from Wednesday right around this 601 area. Didn't get through all of that, but it was a little bit more of a bullish day, surprisingly so, considering all of the events over the weekend. But let's take a quick look at those events, and then we'll look at all of the charts as we head into tomorrow's session. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. So looking at that news, Middle East, you have Iran voting to close the Strait of Hormuz. Is this actually going to happen? You got freight rates already soaring in the region as a result of this. You can see up 76% compared to mid-May, reaching 3,300 there for a 40-foot equivalent unit. So definitely a big step there. You can see spot ranges from $50 up to $1,100. Again, definitely some risk going on there, and that will affect markets eventually. In the short term, markets don't seem to care, which is a little bit surprising. I do think this is going to be a bit of a problem. I think you have a lot of investors saying that this is not actually going to happen and they're not going to be able to control the strait. But I do believe there is some risk. They do some things in the strait that slows shipping, at least raises costs, which could be inflationary, which could present some problems for markets. But for now, all we have is this short-term reaction, and markets do not seem to care at all. Again, surprisingly so, how much they are brushing that off. You can see we went from around $1,900 to the current rate here of around $3,300. So pretty significant steps up over the last month. Moving over to fear and greed, we finished at a 57 from a 55. You can still see fear here on the momentum indicator. Strength just not moving at all. Breadth, you can see, did continue to downtrend even with the up move, which for me says not super convinced that it's going to have a ton of follow through. You got put call ratio also continuing to go higher here today. Volatility pulled back slightly, but still a little bit elevated off of this most recent low. Safe haven demand spiking up with the up move that we saw, surprisingly so there as well. And then junk bonds flat on the day, still in greed. Moving over to seasonality, you can see the low of the month is supposed to be tomorrow. We'll see if that follows through. Do we get another step down here, 24th, 25th potentially? And then do we get this kind of re-acceleration into the end of the month, or do we get a more of a sideways choppy action like you can see here for the Dow or the S&Ps, basically flat here for the end of the month versus your normal years, which is more of a pivot point at that level. So we'll see. Just keep an eye on this for tomorrow and the next day. Moving over to the economic calendar here, you can see a lot of green across the board. Maybe this is part of why markets did see a resumption to the upside here today. Really strong numbers, all better than expectations, all above the 50 line. Existing home sales, also big improvement there. Definitely interesting to see those numbers improve so significantly. And then you got Fed Powell talking tomorrow, and then the 2-year note auction here, around 4% previously. Fed Powell speaking again on the Wednesday, and new home sales. Definitely interested to see what Fed Powell says with all the commentary around him. And then you got consumer confidence there at 10 o'clock tomorrow as well. Moving over to the charts here, starting off with the SPY charts, you can see we did bounce off of that 21 EMA. That was the hope we were going to see a push through there. We didn't end up getting it. We touched it again, of course. VWAP touched those again. Push back above that 600 level, 597.63. Do we get to this trend line here around this kind of 602 area possibly? Momentum stepping back to bullish. RSI, same setup as before, looking for a rejection from that SMA. So really no changes, slow grinding price action, very slightly bullish. If we do get above the trend line, that would be more of a breakout style move, and then you could say more of a flip to bullish, which we don't really have that yet. You can see nice little base in here. Okay, did push through, didn't take out these highs here. You could argue maybe higher high here. It is above all the EMAs and SMAs, but I would still argue that this is kind of sideways choppy price action here. You can see we're in this range here. We went a little higher. We came a little lower. Do we come back to this range and then reject again around 604.54, which was that most recent high? Certainly a possibility. Either way, though, we are still stuck well between this 591 and 604.54 area. Moving over to the SPY charts here on the hourly, you can see we did flip back into bullish conditions. This has been really choppy here. You can see flipping consistently just about every other day seemingly from from bullish to bearish conditions, back to bullish conditions here. Did get to the second ATR band, which again was a little bit surprising. We haven't touched that since back here on the 16th. Since then, had spent a zone of resistance. We did hesitate at the trailing stop, 598.59. Hesitated there for 2 candles and then pushed through into the close. Closed on the high. Again, slightly bullish conditions there. And then looking at the 4-hour chart, still very much bearish conditions. We flipped to bearish conditions back here on the 20th. Held that through to today's session, and then you can see trailing stop there, 605.79 above this most recent high. As long as we continue to hold lower highs from that area here, then we should see bearish conditions. You did see a little bit of volume come through on that last candle of the day. Did end up holding that 89 EMA here on the 4-hour chart, multiple tests of that area. Looked like it was going to go through there and then ended up just not doing it and pushing a little bit higher here. So if we start to see some of these levels go, you could absolutely see 605.79 being that next target, which would push us back to bullish conditions. Moving over to the NASDAQ chart here on the daily, very similar setup, up about 1% off of that 21 EMA and VWAP momentum, stepping it back to bullish. And then you have RSI, same kind of thesis. It is a little bit lower here on the NASDAQ. The NASDAQ has been showing a little bit more weakness. So you can see an RSI of 60.75. Do we rally through and get a test of the SMA, or does this kind of continue to downtrend and fade? Either way, we're right back at these highs, watching this zone. You can see my alert there, 532.37 was the zone that I was watching. Right off of this high again from that Wednesday session. We didn't get above the high from that open on the Friday either. That was a really big wick to the high at 533.55, clean through that Wednesday high. So we didn't get above this zone. So again, for me, this is still consolidation. Same zone we've been in from here all the way back on Thursday the 5th, chopping through the zone, and we are back here again now on the 23rd. So basically no movement. Starting to see just a smidgen of a sell there after hours. Interesting. We'll see if it has any follow through into tomorrow's session. You can see the momentum starting to fade there again after hours. So either way, a little bit more powerful of a day than I thought we might get, but really doesn't change my thesis off of this long consolidation. Moving over to the Tasty charts here, again, you can see we did flip back into bullish conditions. Your trailing stop 525.96, and then you can see a little bit of volume coming through. The biggest volume actually was on that down candle, and then we did see a slight resumption back to this zone here. So a little bit of a different move on the volume when compared to those SPY charts, but looking at that 4-hour chart here, we did come down to that trailing stop 524.68. You can see this is not quite into that bearish condition. I was hoping we would get that today. We didn't get there. We tested that trailing stop again, and now you can see the volume coming through on that bullish candle. So a little bit of potential resumption to consider. You can see we did get some volume through here, and then we did get a nice continuation there. Trying to do it again, it seems like. Can we push through to that next ATR band? That would be 533.76, pretty much in line with that next high that we saw on that big wick. And then if we push through there, your next ATR band would be up in the 537.78 area. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow. The Russell was actually the best on the day, up 1.22%. Tested that 208.22 level, went much lower than it, and then ended up bouncing really powerfully here up through that next level to 1188. And in the after hours, it is above there to 1217. We're seeing a little bit of a surge in the after hours. I didn't see any news around that, but seeing a little bit of a bounce there, something to consider. Pushing through there, you still have overhead resistance at the 144 there, 213.20, and then you can see the Dow. That would push us back above all the EMAs and SMAs, so a little bit more bullish there. 426.20 is the level. After hours, 426.74 if it pushes through here. Next level would be 432.78. Momentum, same setup. With the slight step to bullish, RSI's still below that SMA. Does it come into the zone and reject? We're not quite sure yet, but surprisingly so, both of these did look pretty strong. Closed right on the highs, a little bit of an up move after hours. Moving over to the Mag 7. Mag 7 had a really powerful day, 2.23%. Most of this is going to be driven by Tesla here, but really strong move. Momentum stepping to bullish, RSI stepping to bullish right at that SMA. Again, wondering, is this going to continue to kind of slowly downtrend, or is it going to push through here back into a resumption to bullish, push towards this trend here around 340 or not? Right now, we do continue to hold this 315 area. We were right at it, bounced off that 21 EMA, bounced off of VWAP. Moving over to Apple and Microsoft, you can see Apple did have a little bit of a positive move, just barely getting above the EMAs and SMAs though. That does look a little bit more bullish. Does it head back towards 207.14? Kind of looks like it will. Momentum slightly bullish, RSI slightly bullish. It's up a little bit after hours. And then you got Microsoft just continuing to resume this absolute rocket ship of a move. Up 1.8% there up to that 486 area. Looks like this is headed to 500, seemingly just an absolute rocket ship. Nothing to say here, just continues to go straight up. Moving over to Tesla and NVIDIA. Tesla had a huge day today, 8.23% momentum back to bullish, RSI back to bullish, huge volume, really powerful out of this consolidation, clean through 336 up to that 355 level, tagged that level, pulled back just slightly. This is all on the back of the Robotaxi news. Robotaxi did go fairly well for them today on their launch, and now with that launch, people are starting to price that into the stock a little bit more, so this is a strong move. Next level would be that 369.33 area. You can see trend lines in here as resistance if it does get through that next area, and then NVIDIA basically unchanged on the day in this same consolidation. Momentum still bearish, RSI still slightly bearish, but still holding support. Didn't quite test support, but it did go a little bit lower than it did on that Friday session, so something to consider there. And then after hours, basically unchanged. Moving over to staples and discretionaries, you can see both of these had really good days, so a little bit of an everything buy day. Momentum bullish, RSI bullish, volume coming through. Discretionaries mostly being driven by Tesla, of course, with that huge move there, 1.77% off of the 200, which continued to hold here, the level 210.43. Multiple tests in that area. We held it the last 4 days. Starting to push here. Can it get through 215? Can it get through 219? Those are the big questions. And then discretionaries, and then staples, clean through 81.18, looking for that 81.85 area. Either way, this has been a long consolidation, not really looking for anything crazy here, but relatively safe bet that this is probably going to go just a little bit higher. Nice move there on the day. Moving over to breadth, we did see a nice bounce on breadth. Momentum back to bullish here on both of these. RSIs still waiting to see if that flips to bullish here on the 50-day breadth, but 20-day did step above the SMA, did get above the 51 level, so a little bit more bullish here than it was over the last couple days on 20-day breadth. Something to watch here. And then you can see that move 24% and then about 10.5% here on 50-day breadth. So overall, nice little recovery for markets. Does it have follow through? I would guess that it probably will. Moving over to the dollar here, you got the dollar selling off on today's news, so that is relatively bullish for equities. You got equities going higher with the dollar going down. Makes sense. People are moving out of a little bit of safety and back into equities a little bit. Interesting. We'll see if it has more follow through tomorrow. In terms of levels, 96.85 is that next level of support. Moving over to bonds, J&K continues its run here, clean through those levels towards that 96.51 level. Continues to look very, very good there. Momentum bullish, RSI bullish, and then you can see TLT, nice move there as well, up 0.33%. Did try to go higher and then rejected off that 55 EMA. Maybe we get the push through there tomorrow. Either way, momentum bullish, RSI still bullish here. I still like this setup and I do believe it'll go higher. Then moving over here to the VIX, we're right in the same region we've been in over the last 2 weeks here, really. You can see 6 trading days in the same range, right at the 200 there, 1972. So really no movement. Momentum slightly bearish, RSI slightly bullish, kind of mixed conditions. Do we get a swing? I think this could go either way here now, especially after today's price action. Moving over to my accounts, obviously the markets went up against my position here a little bit. Still in a profitable trade, but in the after hours movement, we'll see if this does swing back to unchanged after this trade here. So we'll see. Right now we're here around 534. You can see I did put on a Russell position as well at 211 for tomorrow for 76 cents. I think the Russell will be in good position. Obviously, that'll be good with the after hours movement. That is at 212.67, so should be in good position there. Otherwise, we'll see. I don't think this push will push us out of the overall consolidation range, but it remains to be seen how much of a run we get off of this news. Let me know down in the comment section what you think of the shipping rates. Are they going to have a broader impact? Or is that all done now with the potential for a ceasefire happening over the next 12 hours? They still voted to close it, but they are now ceasefiring, so we'll see. Is the strait going to stay open now with the ceasefire? Still a little bit of uncertainty there, but markets seem to think it's all good. What do you think? Let me know. Otherwise, like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video. Make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.